curious to hear you speak on what to keep in mind if someone is like, this actually sounds like a really good idea. Like I could totally do this. But I think that people often get it conflated that it has to be 100% ready and buttoned up from the start. And I think what both you or I would suggest is to start from a place of really dialing things in as you kind of progress and be in control of the guests that come to these experiences that you're hosting. Do you have any other pieces of advice that, you know, someone who is like, oh, well, this has to be like ready for review on the first night that I open, but I think you and I would tactically approach it in a different way?
You know, when I started all this in the format that I do it in, you start with friends and family and you fuck up on them and then you get their honest feedback.
Sure.
And you start to dial in, because here's the thing. You're always going to want to get better and do better and use nicer stemware at some point, flatware, plates. So when you start, you could probably think you're killing it right then. But then a year later, you go, oh, well, I just saw these wine glasses. I need to use Zaltos only now. It's always a progression. You're always going to want to do better. So in the beginning, practice on your friends and family. Do the best that you can. Focus on things that are important to you when you go out to eat. I think that if you're giving people what makes you happy, they're probably going to be happy too. Fill their water glass when it's half full. Don't wait till they're done with their water.
Sure.
Little things like that. And then the old saying, practice makes perfect. The more you do it, the more you'll pick up on. The things will get more fine-tuned. It's all a learning experience until the day you die, essentially.
There's that other great anecdote that is, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your whatever you ship out, you shipped too late, you know?
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think that there's something in that for sure of like,
I look at my first oxalis. I was like, wow, that is
so
insane.
Yep.
Did I really plate something like that? Did I use that bowl? Oh my gosh.
Totally. Where do you get your plateware from? Cause it's really, really beautiful.
I buy a lot from either MTC Kitchen or Corin, and funny enough, like Selfridges in London.
Interesting.
They get discounts on like Villeroy and Bosch plates and things like that. I'm always searching. Like even CB2 sometimes comes up with a super cool plate, and those are dirt cheap. So it's all over it,
and often more durable too. Like when they're made in that way, where you're not so paranoid about them completely going.
Or learn Kintsugi.
Yeah. That's. do you know who is it? Joseph Weaver?
Yeah, I've known Joe for years. Yeah.
I have a piece that I need to do that on, and just I have a couple pieces I need to repair, and I'd love to. Is it? Have you done it? Is it something easy that's easy enough to?
No,
DIY?
It's not very easy. I tried to do it. It was a total mess. It's all. I mean, technically, you're just gluing gold glue with your plate. It's not like that. It's hard. I tried to do it, failed miserably.
Man, yeah, I need to do it on a few things for sure that I'm looking up on my shelf.
Yeah, maybe buy some like crappy plates, break them, and practice on those instead of your nice plates.
Right. I'd love to talk wine for a little bit. When you're seated for a dinner, saying maybe you brought some wine, maybe you didn't, and the wine list gets handed to you, can you kind of put yourself in that place and think out loud with us here as to how your process to ordering wine goes?
Yeah, it kind of depends on where you're eating. Let's say you're going to a tasting menu restaurant and they don't give you a menu, but you've looked on Instagram and you see their menus and you kind of get a grasp of what it is they're serving. So if you know the rules of food and wine pairing to a degree, the majority of the time I'll probably just be looking for a champagne, because champagne's going to go with most of the food that you're going to eat in the beginning of the meal. I remember the first time I went to the restaurant in Meadowood, and I didn't know the menu, and I just said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go from Blanc to Blanc champagne into Blanc to Noir champagne into a rosé champagne for the red meat course or whatever. And the somm was like, I wish I was sitting with you right now. So if you don't want to go champagne the whole time, I mean, start with maybe a Chablis, or if your budget doesn't allow for Chablis, go with like a nice crisp white wine, maybe like a Sancerre or a Puy Fumé, something like that. Because the majority of your food is probably going to go with crisp mineral white wines or champagne.
Sure.
And then, if you're sitting down for Thai food, you're going to drink Riesling with some residual sugar in it, because that shit is spicy and you need something to calm that down. Rule of thumb, I just order champagne for the most part, or bring champagne, or buy a red off the list, or whatever it may be.
Makes a lot of sense. I was also going to touch on that point we made earlier of, especially if you're eating out alone, where you can have that conversational rapport starting to build with the staff. Those have resulted in some of the best wine and food experiences that I've had, where it's just you let the person know what you like and what to expect menu wise, especially if it's going to be a place that's not going to present you with a menu. And I think that there's a certain element of people who don't have enough experience with it yet, where it's intimidating to start that conversation, because you're effectively admitting that you need help, and for whatever reason, like that seems like it seems like a bad thing to people, but I don't look at it that way at all.
I don't either. I go to therapy, so I definitely need help. But no, I remember I've been to dinners on my own where I look at a som and I'll be like, listen, I don't really want a wine pairing. I don't usually love wine pairings because a lot of it is throw in. So why don't you put something together of things that you would want to drink with this meal? And they're like, I got you.
Sure. Sure.
And so now you're in their hands, and they're going to take care of you because you were cool. You asked them for help. You said, I don't really like the wine pairing, and they'll splash you some cool stuff that they'll probably end up drinking the rest of it at the end of their shift.
Totally. And that's it. That even in that question that you asked, it's a fantastic question to ask, of even like you said, what's a kind of a crisp, mineral forward white wine that you're really excited about on the list right now? Do you know what I mean? Because you kind of you put that trust in them that almost always results in a good pairing. On the subject of wine pairings, I got a lot of value early on in getting pairings with tasting menus, just because it gave me the ability to taste a lot and taste things you keep three glasses side by side on the table, and you kind of go back and forth, and then you taste with different bites. In touching on eating early on in one's career, is that also something that you would recommend, or there's a better way?
No, I'm speaking as 36-year-old me right now, and how I like to eat. But back in the day, I would only get wine pairings, because let's say you get 10 different wines. You're learning about these wines and how they interact with spice, or certain proteins and vegetables and things like that. I can't believe this wine paired with asparagus. Asparagus is a wine killer.
Right.
You learn those things, and then you start to know what you like and can kind of choose your own adventure. But in the beginning, get the wine pairing. Totally. Just drink all the wine possible. That's how you learn about wine too. You drink all the wine.
Yep.
And you know what you love and you hate and all these things. So I'm speaking as me now, but back in the day, try everything.
Keeping it in the present, it's not even, I don't have a large space that I'm comfortable storing wine in where we kind of live right now. And so I am foregoing starting to collect wine, but you will bring wine to meals. If when that day comes when I am starting to get ready to buy high quality wines that I either want to age or just buy in larger, by the case, where do I start? How do I start that process?
Well, you would start with wine refrigerators, but those aren't for super long-term storing. Your corks will dry out. And then your wine will get messed up. You got to go refrigerated offsite storage, and it's not that expensive. But then that's a slippery slope, because then you buy a locker, and even if it's a small locker, let's say it holds 14 cases, then in your mind you're like, oh, I got to get 14 cases of wine to fill this thing up with. and then it's just a financial disaster.
Right.
But if you get some wine refrigerators, a little hack is maybe taking a little deli and putting some water in it so there's some humidity in there.
Sure.
Because those fans are going. You could have wine for a number of years in those refrigerators. But yeah, just start with the wine fridge. Or if you're lucky enough to have a basement that stays cool at all times, you could put some racks down there. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways. An ex of mine's father turned like his hallway closet into a temperature controlled wine cellar, put a refrigerator unit in it, and just used his hallway closet.
I've seen that a bunch of
yeah.
like under the stair, kind of like
exactly. Yeah.
cool corner of the house kind of set up.
Right.
The places where you procure the wine, is that like the same mentality that you go with your ingredients, where you make friends with a really great somm somewhere, or you have friends who import, or you use winebid.com? Like where do you go?
Winebid.com is a risky one to use because you don't know where the wine was stored. And because if you're buying old wine, it could have been in someone's car for a week in Arizona in the middle of August.
Sure.
That shit's cooked. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the more you drink wine, you're going to meet people in the wine industry. You're going to learn about, cellars being sold off or auctions. And when winebig.com doesn't talk about where the wine came from. If you're buying at auction, I mean, these are expensive wines too. If you're buying at auction, they're going to tell you that it's only been one owner. It's like buying a used car. It's been one owner. It's been garaged.
Yeah.
So it's been like kept at cellar temp and all that stuff. It's just like anything else. You learn what you like, and then you continue down that path, and you'll meet the people that will show you the way. Like, for instance, one of my good friends got a tip on a cellar of someone that passed away.
Wow.
And he went there, and their basement was cold. It's cold all year long, and found some crazy gems and bought a cellar for pennies of what he would pay elsewhere. And so it's things like that that you kind of run into when you're super into wine and get into that world.
Is anybody, I guess, are you making any decisions on purchasing wine now that's being like produced now that you intend on, enjoying down the line? Or it's you save yourself the time by seeking out something that's ready?
That's a tough, all the wine that I like drinking so much, current prices on it are crazy. Burgundy and Champagne are so expensive now. So I'm going to try and find stuff with age that's ready to drink. My patience to wait 10 years to drink a wine, it's not really there yet. Mm-hmm. And I'm not one of those collectors. Like, one of my good buddies has, north of 10,000 bottles of wine. And he's like, I'll put it away for 15 years.
It's ridiculous.
I don't have that much wine to where I can put something in a corner for 10 years and 20 years and revisit it. I like things that I can consume within 5 years.
Sure. I can just see myself getting really into it because I'm not a huge stuff guy. I actually kind of like the idea of wine being something that you can purchase for yourself that is meant to be enjoyed in this way that is almost temporary. It's actually a disservice to buy a nice bottle of wine and have it sit on a shelf forever. There's an end point, and so I can totally see myself getting into it when the storage conditions are right. And I'm glad that you touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a huge thing too. I mean, I've had friends have wine get cooked, even it being in their back seat on the way to something because their car was, or they parked somewhere and their car got out and it cooked the wine.
Stresses me out.